For centuries, humans have been growing alongside our botanical brethren. Our histories have mixed and mingled to bring us modern medical marvels, faded folklore, and everything in between. Of course, in order to understand the plant, we have to start with its roots. I'm M. Grubner Gaddis, and this is Rooted. Hello, and welcome back for another week of Rooted. This episode has been requested a few times, so I'm finally giving in to the peer pressure and digging in to radishes. These are technically a cold season veggie, but we're going to ignore that for now. Without further ado, let's get into it. Radishes, or Raphanus sativus, are a member of the Brassica family, or sometimes they're called mustard family, with famous relatives like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and, of course, mustard. While we aren't entirely sure where they originated from, since they didn't really end up getting preserved or recorded anywhere that we could definitively trace them to, scientists do think it was probably somewhere in Southeastern Asia, since it's one of the only places that has truly wild radishes. Total side note, I think we need to shirts or something that just say truly wild radishes. I think that would be great merch. But from there, they started kind of getting domesticated all over Asia until they actually crossed over through Russia and into the rest of Europe, where people loved them so much, they started taking them everywhere. Kind of like the plant equivalent of tiny lapdogs, but they were kind of way more useful. No offense to tiny lapdogs everywhere. They were so popular, in fact, that they weren't just some of the first documented staple crops in Europe, right up there with potatoes, onions, and fava beans, but they were also recorded as the very first domesticated crop that colonizers planted upon arriving in the Americas due to their quick growing cycle, dense punch of nutrients, and relative ease of growing. Obviously, like most domesticated plants, we have about 1 million varieties of radish now. Some of them are super crunchy, some are extra spicy, and they come in a variety of unique colors, shapes, and sizes. However, when most of us think of a radish, we're thinking of those slightly pointed, round roots with a deep reddish-purple skin, white flesh, and a fresh crunch with a light, peppery taste. Radishes really aren't too picky, but they do prefer cooler temperatures with plenty of water. Some varieties can take as little as 3 weeks to harvest, which is really wild when you consider the parts that most of us use are actually the starchy taproot. And it wasn't just old-school farmers and peasants who were into this fresh, rooty-tooty crop. According to Germanic legend, the Lord of the Mountain, who is also sometimes called Johannes, who also happens to be some sort of demon, depending on who you ask, fell madly in love with a princess. And before we dig in, I wanted to clarify that the Lord of the Mountain was also seen as sort of a trickster god. One could never really be sure if he was going to be super friendly and teach you about medicine or give you some sourdough, or if he was going to punk you so bad that your great-great-grandkids would still feel the embarrassment. Now, on to the story. So, one day the Lord of the Mountain saw a princess and was basically like, whoa, that has got to be the coolest girl in the whole world. I'm gonna have to steal her away. And then he did. And he kept this poor girl locked up in a room. But he also felt kind of bad. So to make it better, he filled the room with her favorite food, which she said was radishes. And so you just know that room had to absolutely reek. And that she deeply regretted picking radish and not chocolate cake or something. But anyway, after a few months of sitting there, eating radishes and presumably smelling her own farts, the princess got super lonely. So, the Lord of the Mountain turned one of her radishes into a cricket, which seems like sort of a risky and fragile friend to have, but I was not consulted on this particular radish to friend pipeline, so my opinion here doesn't matter. Anyway, the Lord of the Mountain warned the girl that as the radish leaves started to dry up, so too would the life of her beloved cricket. Not wanting to waste any time, the girl quickly told her entire life story to the cricket, asking them to leap out of her window and find her a boyfriend. Try as they might, the cricket just didn't quite make it to a point where it stumbled upon a gaggle of suitors before the radish leaves started to dry up. But they did, however, manage to tell all of the crickets in the area, who somehow managed to spread the word and communicate it to a very handsome man who happened to be in the market for a wife. So this man, and in my mind a very powerful army of crickets capable of speaking German, show up and rescue the princess, and they all live happily ever after. Except for the Lord of the Mountain, who's left alone with a weird fart room, but honestly he kind of deserved that. And as it turns out, farts aren't the only part of radishes that repel things. According to a variety of different folk magics, radishes were often used to keep evil spirits at bay. Often, the radish tops could be made into a wreath or tossed onto a front garden to ward off negative energy from the home, and some people even made radish green necklaces to keep evil and negative intentions away from the wearer. Do you guys think we should bring that back? I feel like maybe we just aren't getting freaky enough with botanical fashion anymore, and I'm not saying it would solve all of our problems, but I'm saying maybe it would solve like one or two. And speaking of using radishes in creative problem solving, men apparently used to try to protect themselves from quote unquote the chattering of women by feeding them radishes before bed. And to that, I really say as if. As a woman who loves radishes and yapping, this is where I tell the men who listen to this show to abandon all hope, as women of today are simply immune to radishes, and we will not be tamed. And also thank you for helping to support the fall of the patriarchy in a small way by listening to this podcast and supporting the chattering of women. In other tales of men liking radishes, apparently they were also given as an offering to Apollo, but being Apollo, he needed them to have a little bit of extra flair. So they were always very intricately carved, and also sometimes dipped in gold. Love that for him. This is a very similar tradition in Oaxaca, which is called the Night of the Radish, and it happens on December 23rd, where artists carve a special variety of radish that has been bred to be much larger and easier to carve than the ones we typically eat. I'll add some photos of it onto our Instagram so you can see. But outside of art and offerings, radishes are also commonly used in medicine and herbalism. They were often called on to treat stomach and intestinal disorders, bile duct problems, loss of appetite, pain and swelling or inflammation in the mouth and throat, plus treating a tendency towards infections, inflammation, or excessive mucus of the respiratory tract, as well as helping with bronchitis, fever, colds, and cough. In Ayurvedic medicine, radishes are regarded as a warming and revitalizing food, helping to restore energy in those who feel lethargic or stagnant in their life path. Radishes are also super high in vitamin C, and all parts of them are edible. They're obviously a super popular ingredient in cooking, as well as to add a flourish and crunch to some fresher dishes or rich dishes that need a little extra heat and crunch. I'm gonna do us all a favor and not list all the ways that radishes are being used in food, but I did want to mention another use specifically for daikon radish, which is currently being used to help open up dense and heavy clay areas in rewilding processes, because they can actually really break up that heavy soil and allow other roots to get in and start breaking up that soil while they repair it. So next time you see a radish, either in a garden or in the store, I hope you'll take a moment to say hello and support your local women yapping. That's all I've got for this week, but I'll be back next week with another plant for us all to dig into. See you then. Until next time, be kind to yourselves, be kind to the earth, and just like a plant, drink your water. If you liked the show, please subscribe and consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at rooted.pod. We're finally updating regularly on YouTube at rooted.podcast, and you can check out our website, rootedpod.com, for transcripts, updates, merch, and so much more. The show is written, produced, and hosted by me. I'm Grebner Gaddis, edited by Kat Fren of Fren Diagram, and our theme music was written and produced by Eric Cluxon. Rooted is a Henbane Media LLC production.